Hey friends, Jill here. Welcome back to the farm. I am out in my beautiful high tunnel this morning. Truthfully, I haven't gotten to spend a whole lot of time out here. And I've got all these little, systems and time blocks for myself and on the farm. So I do have specific days, so it's usually Tuesdays and Fridays. I would spend time out in the tunnel doing pruning and maintenance and harvesting and all the things. But with all the current adventures I've been going through, my schedule kind of got a bit off. So I'm out here today. We have all of these bush pepper varieties behind us, and we've got like a bell pepper style, we've got ember, which is a hot pepper, and then we have our shishitos towards the end. These are really kind of just starting to take off because we planted them so much later than we planted our first round of peppers that we did on that single trellis. But my plan is to harvest these today and get them cut up and in the freeze dryer. I saw a friend of mine make some like hot chili powder salt for like soups and seasonings, and I thought, oh, that would be a great way because I could mix a whole bunch of peppers and just have this and add some different sea salts to it. So I think that's a great way to utilize these peppers. And also too, I don't know if you guys experience this, but we've put up a lot of food this year. We've grown a lot of food. So fresh eating, a bunch of ferments, we have food in cold storage. We were able to freeze dry and dehydrate some, but I still have this, oh my gosh, the summer is ending and I didn't put up enough food. And I know that that's just bananas because I grow so much food in the fall and winter that, I feel good about our food security. But that is something I'm just seeing so much of is we really need to be mindful of our food. We really need to be mindful of our food. We need to be growing more food. And those are all things I completely agree with. But with that, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, did I put up as much as I could have? Did I utilize my harvest the best way possible? So did I, X, Y, and Z? So while I am feeling a little bit better today, I thought I'm gonna come out here, knock out harvesting all of this. That's one of those things too, with things that you're gonna put in the dehydrator or the freeze dryer. If you can just harvest and get it inside, that's something you can work on later at night. Usually that's like once I put the kids to bed, I'm in the kitchen for a few hours. And so it seems a little bit more manageable for me instead of just spending, half the day harvesting or either all day in the kitchen. I try to break it up into these kind of increments that seem a bit more manageable just for our life right now. But these are still doing really well. I wanted to show you guys some of these. So we got this beautiful yellow pepper. I am noticing we're having more disease issues with these specific varieties than we were with our Carmen peppers. And so I'm wondering, I'm thinking through a few different things. Is it just a variety? Is there maybe a specific deficiency in this bed that wasn't in the other bed? So if you start to have disease issues, just know there's a few things to look for. It doesn't always mean one thing. You kind of got to analyze the whole situation and really start to try to dive in and what actually is the problem. So for me, I know that this was one of those beds that we had a lot of soil issues in, and we've spent the last year really trying to treat those deficiencies appropriately. We've been doing the Ultra from AgriGrow, which is like a prebiotic that we've injected in here. And so I think that these plants, more than likely, it's just a deficiency issue. But at least I know that, and I can kind of tweak and adjust as I need to. So these are sweet. They're not a hot pepper. You use them just like you would a bell. And so I think I am going to just probably mix some of the hot peppers and the sweet peppers together because I really just kind of want to have this be like a versatile seasoning mix. Over here we've got the ember pepper. These are actually, the plants look a lot better. These are really just kind of starting to do some stuff. It's like playing hide and go seek. So for some of these, I'll harvest if they're not quite ripe, especially if I think it might take me a few days to do something with them. And this is specifically true if you are growing tomatoes. I really prefer to harvest tomatoes underripe and let them harvest them at blush. And so that way if you are selling them, whoever you're selling them to has the opportunity to have them for a little while before they have to cook them or sell them, you know, resell them or whatever. But then if you have so many, for us, there's a lot of peppers here I'm harvesting. It kind of gives me the opportunity to work on preserving some now, but then I can do it in kind of those stages of where, oh, okay, in a few days I can do some more preserving and some more, instead of just having all this super ripe produce and then I don't really know what I'm gonna do with it all at that, you know, same time. Last year, Jessica and I tag team planting peppers. So she had planted a bunch of peppers. I had come over and planted a bunch of peppers. I'd planted the ahi pepper, which I'd talked about before on here. I planted the fish pepper, or it's known as like the candy cane pepper, I think. Super, super beautiful. It's this green pepper with like, it's variegated, but then it will turn red as it begins to ripen. Just so stunning. Had really, really great flavor. I grew some lilac bells, some like I think it's called the sparkle violet, and I loved having the diverse color. So when you come into my tunnel right now, you've got red tomatoes, green cucumbers, red peppers. You know, I got that one little variety of the yellow bells, but there's a lot of green, there's a lot of red, and I know that I really, really enjoyed aesthetically coming into my high tunnel last year and just seeing purples and reds and yellows and variegated, like just all these beautiful pops of color that were in the high tunnel from the peppers. And then they did have much more diverse flavor, and so that is something I want to talk about, because you guys know your goals. we reference back to this all the time because it is so valuable. Like the information I'm telling you guys, it's so valuable, but you have to know your goals. And so for the summertime, when I'm putting up, you know, a lot of salsa or diced tomatoes, I'm thinking about volume. So I'm coming out here and I'm wanting to grow something that I'm not necessarily thinking about just cutting up and eating, and I want to have that, you know, crazy diverse amount of flavors. I'm thinking about what I can, what's going to produce a lot, and then I can add flavoring to, whether that's in a spaghetti or whether that's in a casserole or some curry or something like that. But then when you go into the fall and the winter, for us specifically, we really, we grow for flavor. So we kind of switch from growing from hybrids to growing heirlooms. And so if you want to grow for flavor, if you want to grow to explore, you know, all the culinary things with food and just all of that, I really do recommend growing an heirloom, because their flavor is exceptional. That's literally what they shine for. But if production is at the forefront of your mind, then you're probably concerned less about flavor. You're concerned more about volume, consistency, less disease and pest pressure, which those are all things that you're going to find. I do think there is a sweet little balance in the two, and so I like to grow heirlooms and hybrids on my farm, and I think each season has its appropriate place for them. So in the winter time, I shift more to kind of those heirlooms, while in the summertime we're just thinking about volume, and hybrids are just the best option there. Another piece of advice I'd like to give you, if maybe you're watching my channel and you're new to gardening, welcome to this wild adventure. Growing food is the most challenging, satisfying, exhilarating thing. There's just something about planting a seed, watching it grow, harvest it, then take it inside, cook it, eat it, preserve it, whatever it may be. There's just something about that unless you've experienced it, I could never express to you the feeling that it is. But if you are new to gardening, it can be overwhelming. Do you grow hybrids? Do you grow heirlooms? What is a hybrid? What is an heirloom? There's so much to it, and it's easy to get overwhelmed. It's easy to get discouraged, and it's easy to convince yourself that, well, this is just too much. There's too much involved in this, so I'm just not going to do any of it. And I encourage you, don't be like that. The only way you're gonna learn and figure out your preferences, your growing styles, is by growing it. So if you are new to gardening and maybe you're spending this fall and this winter really trying to just like figure out what you want your spring garden to look like, I would tell you to go through that seed catalog, and I would tell you to order a few hybrids, order a few heirlooms, and really do that comparison for yourself. But before you do that, you do have to write out your goals and figure out what it is. If you're wanting to reduce your grocery budget, then maybe growing only heirlooms isn't going to be your best option. But if you're wanting to spice things up in the kitchen and just add all these diverse flavors, then maybe an heirloom is where you should go. And so don't be overwhelmed. There are thousands upon thousands upon thousands of seeds that you can grow. And so if you grow something and you don't like it, grow a different variety the next time. If you grow hybrids and you're like, this isn't right for me, try another hybrid. If you grow heirlooms and say this isn't right for me, grow another heirloom. There's so many options that there should be no reason that each of us, based off of our own goals, can't find something that's going to suit our family best. And then also too, personal recommendation. That's why I like to share with you guys what it is that I'm growing and the variety and give you feedback. I know there's a lot of my friends who do the same thing, you know, that's why we have all these garden tour videos. Go back through and watch those, you know, but also take into mind that my family's, you know, flavor preferences might be different than your family's, but at least it gives you an idea. If you've, you know, talked to 3 different people and they all tell you that this one pepper variety is horrible, probably don't buy that pepper variety, you know, pick another one. But I do think that there is such a diverse array of like flavors and styles and, you know, all these other things that we should all be able to, in theory, find some sort of variety that's going to suit our family the best. And that's one thing I love about gardening, is that we can all be growing our own food, but it can be so diverse in the style of how we're growing our food and what we are actually growing, how we are preserving it. And so the cool thing about that to me is that you have thousands of people who are all growing food, right? But then you also have thousands of people who are teaching and modeling growing and preserving food differently. No 2 people can do it alike. I can have my farm where I'm growing heirlooms and hybrids. I'm incorporating high tunnel growing, outdoor growing, in-ground, no-till, raised bed. And I can have someone else who's doing the same thing per se, but their take on it's going to be slightly different. So you can take a nugget from what I say and apply it. You can take a nugget from what they say and you can apply it. And then you can kind of build out your own farm based off of just all the research and evidence, and honestly, just like trial and error yourself, which is really, really inspiring. You know, I found so many people who are really getting into food and growing their own food. They're wanting to be connected. They're wanting to not be so reliant. And I think that that's a good place to be, not out of fear, out of just like, we should be taking more control of this. You know, I don't ever want to be pushed into a corner to do something because I'm fearful of what might happen. But I want to take control of my family's food needs and know that I don't have to worry about that. And so that feels really good. Y'all, there are so many shishitos, and I honestly haven't even made it down one side. So that's awesome. All right, so there are a few other things I want to talk to you guys about, maybe just to consider. I know that not everyone is growing a garden throughout the fall and the winter, and that is the season we're approaching. Some of you may be getting your second succession of those, you know, summer crops, and some of you guys may already be experiencing like fall and winter weather, depending on where it is that you live in your region and your climate. But it is good, even if you're not growing food throughout the fall and the winter, to have some sort of checklists. I know for us, we have to go through and winterize our farm every year, and those are certain things that we have to do. And so maybe these are some things that you guys can be thinking about, whether you are growing food throughout the fall and the winter or you're not. It's still good to think about these things and really kind of figure out your own practice as far as what are some things I need to do when I end one season before I start that next season. For us, one of the biggest things that we are always thinking about during all 4 seasons on our farm is bed management. So if we are ripping out our summer crops, which is what we're doing, some of these summer crops behind us we're ripping out, we are planting a second succession of those, and we can get by with that because we are growing in a high tunnel, so we do have some advantages there. But we're thinking about amending those beds, right? We're thinking about ripping those plants out, adding nutrients back in. If you are not growing food throughout the fall and the winter, maybe consider putting a cover crop on that ground so that it doesn't stay bare. When you leave, you know, soil exposed, that's when a lot of issues start to happen. You start having erosion, you start having just really compacted, clumpy soil based off of the conditions of your weather. And so it's always good to just plant something in that, because when you do that, you're continuing to add diversity back into your soil. You're continuing to add nutrients back into your soil. And a lot of times people ask, well, if I plant a cover crop, what do I do with it when it's done? And you'll hear the term chop and drop, and it's where you plant a cover crop, you chop off the top, and you let it just like decompose, and you plant in that. And that's really the method that we follow. So we will have some bare beds on our farm this fall and winter. We'll plant a cover crop, usually some sort of like hairy vetch is what we're doing for the winter, and that's just really good. But making sure you get all your beds cleaned out. You don't want to leave dead plants in your beds. You know, you really want to get them clean. You really want to set yourself up for the next season too. And I know that some of us can be tired after that long summer season, and the last thing we want to do is think about spending more time in the garden because we've kind of done our dues, right? Or maybe that's not you. Maybe you're like me and we're like, oh, when's the next season coming? I can't wait. But sometimes I know that those end of the season garden chores tend to get forgotten. And I will tell you, it's good to just go through, pick up any of your supplies that you've left out in the garden. Make sure you just have a clean space. Go through, throw some seed in, plant a cover crop, and just really kind of set yourself up for the next season. And if you aren't planting specifically throughout the fall and the winter, this is a great opportunity to just be thinking about your vision and your goals for the next year. So for us, we are still wrapping up our summer crops. We are cleaning out beds that the plants are dying, and we are going in, we're adding prebiotics, soil amendments. We're planting cover crops on the beds that we aren't using. We have got seeds started that we're going to be planting, so we'll be transplanting. We're also thinking about trellising. If you had any sort of trellising system put in place and you don't think you're going to use that same trellising system the next year, or maybe you want to rotate beds, this is a good time. Take down those trellises. Make sure that if you're using zip ties or a plastic clip, that none of that fell into your soil. Just really do a good farm and garden cleanup. Now, I recognize that these may be common sense things to do, right? Like, Jill, you're telling me to clean up my garden once the season's over. I know to do that. You may know, just like I may know, but if you walk into my high tunnel right now or out in my raised bed garden, there's going to be a place where you're like, girl, you are a hot mess. Because it's easy when you're out there working, it's easy to leave, you know, tools behind. Or maybe if you transplanted out trays, you've got, you know, some sort of, you know, trays and things out there, or you've got, you know, half-used bags of soils, or maybe your fertilizers were left out, whatever it may be. It's easy to kind of mess up a place. But even for me, like, all of our ceramic pots are getting moved in because I don't want them to break and crack throughout the winter. And so those are things too that you don't want to have spent all this time and invested in these things, even if they are decorative things for your garden, and then they end up breaking and you have to rebuy, because that's just a waste of time and money, and nobody wants to do that. So I would encourage you guys right now, if you're not growing for the fall and the winter, do a garden cleanup, plant a cover crop. If you are growing for the fall and the winter, make sure you have a plan, make sure you have your seeds started, or you bought your transplants, or you're thinking about where you're going to buy your transplants, and really just set yourself up for the next season. All right, guys, not to toot my own horn or anything, that is a good, this is all peppers. So I cannot fit all of these in the freeze dryer at once, so probably that'll be my goal for the rest of the week. So what I like to do is I cut both ends off, and then I just cut them in these small, long, little slender pieces, pop them in the freeze dryer for about 24 hours, and then I actually just take those and throw them in a mason jar. I don't grind them down. However, with this like spicy salt, I probably will just throw it in a food processor, pulse it a little bit, put some sea salt flakes in there. I bet it will be so So delicious. Thanks for hanging out with me while I harvested peppers today. And also be thinking about what those next steps look like for you on your farm. Are you cleaning out beds? Are you getting ready to plant again? If you are, just be thinking through how can you set yourself up for the next season? How can you make sure you've got a clean garden? How can you make sure you have nutrient-dense beds ready for you to plant in them? And these are always things that I like to think about going into the next season and ending a season, just to kind of make those transitions a bit smoother on our farm. But I hope this was helpful. Again, thanks for hanging out. I'll talk to you soon.